Our history books might be completely wrong. We are taught a linear story of human progress, a slow climb from simple stone tools to complex machines. But what if that story is missing entire chapters, scattered across the globe, buried in impossibly ancient rock layers, lie objects that shatter this timeline? These are out-of-place artifacts or OOP arts. They are prehistoric tools that, according to everything we know, simply should not exist. A hammer encased in stone 100 million years old. A gear-driven computer found in an ancient Greek shipwreck. By the end of this journey, you will have seen 25 pieces of a puzzle that does not fit the official picture. We will explore a world where aluminum was smelted before the pyramids were built, and where complex machinery predates the Roman Empire by millennia. What do you believe is possible for our ancient ancestors? The first artifact on our list is a simple carpenter's tool that defies simple explanation. In the year 1936, a couple named Max and Emma Hahn were walking along a creek bed near London, Texas, when they noticed a curious piece of rock with a bit of wood protruding from it. They took it home, and years later, their son cracked it open to reveal something astonishing. Inside was an iron hammer with a wooden handle completely encased in the solid stone. The rock itself was identified as Cretaceous rock, a formation dating back well over 100 million years from an era when dinosaurs roamed the earth. Scientific analysis confirmed the rock was ancient and had formed around the object. The hammer's head is made of a surprisingly pure form of iron, and the wooden handle has even begun the process of turning to coal, a transformation that requires immense age and pressure. This is not a modern tool that fell into a crack. The concretion, the process of the rock forming around it, suggests the hammer was present when the sediment was laid down, trapping it for eons. Mainstream science offers a potential counter-argument. It is possible, they suggest, that a more recent hammer, perhaps from the 19th century, could have been encased by a rapid mineral concretion process. Dissolved minerals in water can sometimes precipitate and harden around an object relatively quickly, creating a false appearance of great age. Yet, even this explanation struggles with the specific geology and the state of the wood, which shows signs of petrification. The London hammer remains a classic OOP art because it is so tangible, so ordinary in its design, yet so impossibly out of place. It is a modern-looking tool sealed inside a tomb from the Age of Giants, forcing us to question everything we think we know about the timeline of human industry. Just a few decades after the discovery of the London hammer, another seemingly ordinary object emerged from the earth with an equally impossible story. In February 1961, 3 rockhounds were searching for geodes near Olancha, California. They cracked open what appeared to be a common lump of hardened clay, expecting to find beautiful crystals inside. Instead, they found a man-made object. It looked strikingly like a modern spark plug. This is the Coso Artifact. The object itself was a marvel of miniature engineering. At its center was a ceramic core, a type of porcelain insulator. Surrounding this was a hexagonal sheath, as if designed to be turned with a wrench, and a metallic shaft that completed the assembly. When the finders took it to a geologist, the initial examination sent shockwaves through their small group. The geode, the hard rock nodule that had encased it, was estimated to be 500,000 years old. X-ray analysis only deepened the mystery. The images revealed a tiny metal pin at the end of the shaft, a level of complexity that seemed impossible for any known ancient civilization. How could a spark plug, a component essential for internal combustion engines, exist from a time when early humans were just beginning to use the most basic stone tools? Mainstream science was swift to offer a counter-explanation. Skeptical geologists proposed that the object was in fact a champion spark plug from the 1920s. They argued that it had been encased not in a slow-forming geode over millennia, but in a rapidly concreting iron nodule. Dissolved minerals from the soil, they suggested, could have cemented around the lost spark plug in a matter of decades, creating a convincing but false shell of great age. Yet this explanation struggles to satisfy all the questions. How did a spark plug from the early automotive era become so perfectly and completely integrated into such a solid formation? The process of concretion is not typically so thorough or so convincing as to fool initial geological appraisal. The Coso Artifact presents a different kind of puzzle than the primitive hammer. It is not a simple tool, but a piece of precise industrial age technology found in a context that predates not only industry, but humanity itself. It forces us to wonder if our timeline of invention is not just incomplete, but perhaps part of a much larger and far more mysterious cycle. Deep beneath the sands of Eastern Europe lies a metal that rewrites the rules of ancient technology. In 1974, construction workers digging a trench along the Mureș River in Aiud, Romania, uncovered something truly baffling. Buried under 35 feet of dense sand alongside the massive bones of a mastodon, they found a wedge-shaped object made of a lightweight, silvery metal. This was the Aiud Wedge. Initially, it was dismissed as a simple rock, but its surprising weight for its size prompted a closer look. Laboratory analysis revealed the impossible. The object was composed of an alloy of aluminum. This was not just a lump of raw metal, it was a manufactured product, a complex blend of aluminum with traces of copper, zinc, silicon, and other elements. This composition points directly to a sophisticated industrial process. The problem is, aluminum does not occur naturally in a pure metallic form on Earth. To produce it, you need the Hall-Héroult process, a method of electrolysis that was not invented until the late 19th century. So how did a refined aluminum alloy end up buried with the bones of an Ice Age giant in a layer dated to be at least 11,000 years old? The immediate and perhaps most thrilling theory is that the wedge is a fragment from a prehistoric vehicle, maybe even an aircraft. Its unique shape, with a central hole that could have served as a pivot point, does suggest a functional mechanical purpose far beyond a simple tool. Skeptics proposed it was simply a piece from a World War II German aircraft that had crashed or been buried. Yet this explanation falls apart under scrutiny. The layer of hard, compacted sand and the mastodon bones surrounding it place it firmly in a prehistoric context, untouched by modern machinery until the construction crew arrived. Furthermore, the thick layer of oxide coating the wedge indicates it lay in that earth for millennia, not mere decades. The Aiud Wedge presents a paradox more stark than a hammer or a spark plug. It is not just an object out of time, it is a product of a specific, advanced industrial science found in an era we thought was defined by hunter-gatherers with stone-tipped spears. If this artifact is genuine, it suggests a forgotten chapter where metallurgy reached a level we would not see again until the modern age. The mystery of ancient alloys only deepens with a discovery pulled directly from the fuel of the Industrial Revolution itself. In 1885, at the Wolfsegg coal mine in Austria, a worker splitting a block of Tertiary-era coal found a perfectly formed iron cube nestled within. The object was nearly a perfect cube, just over 2 inches on each side, with a deep groove cut around its midsection and slightly rounded edges. It was made of solid, hardened steel, and it showed no signs of handcrafting, no hammer marks or file scratches that would point to a human blacksmith. This was no simple lump of ore. It was a manufactured object found sealed inside coal that was millions of years old. The cube was initially dismissed as a practical joke, perhaps something a miner had dropped. But the truth was far stranger. The block of coal had been solid, with no fissures or cracks that could have allowed a modern object to fall inside. The cube had to have been deposited when the coal itself was forming in the Tertiary period, an epoch that began over 65 million years ago. The object was subjected to various tests, including a thorough analysis by the Vienna Natural History Museum. The results confirmed it was worked iron, but its origin remained a complete enigma. Mainstream science proposed two primary theories. The first suggested it was a fragment of a meteorite, a piece of iron-nickel from space that had been forged into a strange shape by its fiery passage through the atmosphere. The second theory argued it was a concretion, a natural lump of minerals that had, by a 1 in a billion chance, formed into a near-perfect geometric shape within the coal seam. Yet both explanations struggle against the cube's specific properties. Meteorites, while sometimes angular, do not typically form into precise cubes with a symmetrical groove. And natural concretions are almost never so geometrically perfect or composed of such uniform, hardened steel. The Wolfsegg Iron Cube forces a difficult question. Could it be a product of a natural world capable of imitating human industry with uncanny precision? Or is it a relic from a time so distant that its makers and their purpose are entirely lost to us? Traveling even further back in time, we find objects that challenge our very definition of life itself. In the mineral mines near Klerksdorp, South Africa, miners have been unearthing strange metallic spheres from a rock layer known as the Precambrian pyrophyllite. These are the Klerksdorp Spheres, and they are estimated to be a staggering 3 billion years old. Their appearance is anything but natural. Many are perfectly round, while others are disc-shaped, and almost all feature 3 parallel grooves etched with uncanny precision around their equators. They are made of a nickel-steel alloy called pyrite, and they feel unnaturally heavy in the hand, like ball bearings forged in the dawn of time. Mainstream geology has a firm, scientific explanation for these objects. They are classified as concretions, natural formations where minerals precipitate around a central nucleus. In this case, the process was likely driven by microbial activity. Ancient bacteria living in the soft sediment could have created localized chemical conditions that caused the pyrite to form in these spherical shapes. The grooves, according to this view, are simply the result of crystalline growth patterns, a quirk of nature that mimics intelligent design. Yet, this explanation struggles to account for the most baffling claims made about these spheres. Some researchers and miners insist that the spheres are so perfectly balanced that even with modern technology, creating such an object would be a formidable challenge. The 3 grooves are equidistant and run parallel to each other with a precision that seems to defy random mineral crystallization. How could simple microbial action produce objects of such geometric perfection and apparent symmetry? These spheres were formed in an era when Earth was a toxic, alien world, a place where the most complex life forms were simple, single-celled organisms. The idea that they could be the product of a natural, undirected process is a comfortable scientific answer, but the unsettling alternative is that they represent a form of technology, or perhaps art, from a time before multicellular life even existed, a signature from an intelligence we cannot begin to comprehend. The precision of those ancient spheres fades into a different kind of mystery entirely, one not of ambiguous origins but of undeniable and breathtaking complexity. In the year 1900, sponge divers off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera were exploring a Roman-era shipwreck when they pulled up a heavily corroded lump of bronze and wood from the silty floor. At first glance, it seemed like just another piece of wreckage, but decades later, when archaeologists began to carefully clean and X-ray the object, they saw the impossible. Inside was an intricate clockwork of interlocking bronze gears, a device so advanced it was unlike anything else from the ancient world. This was the Antikythera Mechanism, a portable analog computer dating back to around 100 years before the Common Era. Its purpose was staggering. This wasn't a tool for farming or warfare, it was a machine for modeling the cosmos. By turning a hand crank, the user could advance a series of dials and pointers that predicted the movements of the sun, the moon, and the known planets. It could forecast lunar and solar eclipses with remarkable accuracy, and it even accounted for the irregular orbit of the Moon through a clever system of gears that mimicked the physics of the solar system. One particular gear, with 223 teeth, was specifically designed to replicate the metonic cycle, a 19-year period after which the phases of the Moon repeat on the same days of the year. This was not just a calendar, it was a mechanical representation of heavenly motion. The existence of the Antikythera Mechanism is a fact that mainstream archaeology fully accepts, but its implications are what shatter our conventional timeline. Nothing of comparable mechanical sophistication would appear again until the astronomical clocks of medieval Europe over 1,000 years later. This single device, born from the heart of the classical world, forces a complete re-evaluation of ancient technological capabilities. It suggests a lost lineage of advanced mechanical engineering, a school of thought and craftsmanship that flourished and then vanished, leaving behind only this one corroded clue from the depths of the sea. Who were the geniuses who designed it, and what other wonders did their hands create that were lost to time? While the Antikythera Mechanism reveals a forgotten peak of classical engineering, other artifacts challenge the very maps of human exploration. On the coast of Maine, a simple coin turned the accepted history of the New World upside down. In 1957, amateur archaeologists were excavating a Native American settlement at the site known as Goddard. The people who lived here were the Penobscot, a culture dating back centuries. Among the thousands of typical artifacts like stone tools and pottery shards, one small metallic object stood out. It was a silver coin, but this was not a colonial English or Spanish piece. When experts finally identified it, they were stunned. It was a Norse penny, a currency used in Norway during the 11th century, minted between 1065 and 1080. This is the main penny. Its immediate implication is staggering. It suggests that Viking explorers, who we know settled in Newfoundland at Elance Ox Meadows around the year 1000, ventured much further south along the North American coast. The standard history taught in schools tells us that Christopher Columbus was the first European to reach the Americas in 1492. This coin, buried in a pre-Columbian Native American site, directly contradicts that story. It hints at a web of contact, trade, or travel that connected the Old World and the New World centuries before Columbus was even born. So, how did an 11th century Norwegian coin end up in a Native American shell midden in Maine? The debate is fierce. Proponents of its authenticity point to the context of the find. The coin was uncovered by professional archaeologists in a carefully documented dig. It was found deep within the site, stratified among other artifacts that were radiocarbon dated to between 1200 and 1300. This places the coin firmly in a pre-Columbian layer. They argue the most logical explanation is that it was acquired by native people through trade with Norse visitors, perhaps from a passing Nar, a Viking merchant ship that sailed down the coast, exchanging goods with the local inhabitants. It would have been a curiosity, a piece of exotic material to be treasured or used in ornamentation. The skeptics, however, raise compelling counter-arguments. They suggest the coin could be a hoax planted at the site to cause confusion. More plausibly, they propose it was a later trade item. Norse artifacts were highly prized by collectors in the 19th and early 20th centuries. It is possible that a much later Native American acquired the coin from a European settler or collector, and then simply dropped it at the ancient site where it later became mixed with older material. This would mean the coin is genuinely old, but its presence at the site is an accident of modern history, not proof of ancient contact. The truth remains maddeningly out of reach. The main penny is a whisper of a possibility, a single data point in a vast empty space on the historical map. If it is authentic, it forces us to redraw the routes of Viking exploration and acknowledge that the first chapters of transoceanic contact are far more complex and interconnected than we ever believed. The intricate gears of the Antikythera Mechanism hint at a classical world buzzing with forgotten ingenuity. But what if that ingenuity extended to a force we think of as purely modern? In the dusty archives of the National Museum of Iraq lies a collection of objects that seem to defy their ancient context. Known collectively as the Baghdad-battery, these artifacts were discovered in the 1930s at a site near modern-day Baghdad, dating back to the Parthian period, which spanned from around 250 years before the Common Era to the 224th year of the Common Era. Each set consists of 3 simple components: a clay jar about the size of a man's fist, a copper cylinder carefully soldered with a lead-tin alloy, and an iron rod suspended inside the cylinder. The jar itself shows signs of being sealed with an asphalt or bitumen plug, which would have held the iron rod in place, insulating it from the copper. The controversy ignites when you consider what happens if you fill such a jar with an acidic liquid, something as common as vinegar or grape juice. The acid would act as an electrolyte, allowing a chemical reaction between the 2 different metals. The copper cylinder becomes the positive terminal, the iron rod becomes the negative terminal, and a small electric current around 1 to 2 volts would flow between them. In essence, this simple terracotta pot could function as a primitive galvanic cell, a basic battery. This is not a high-powered device. Its output is incredibly weak, but it is measurable and real. So what possible use could such a faint electrical trickle have had in the ancient world? One compelling theory suggests electroplating. A skilled artisan could have used the current to deposit a thin layer of gold or silver onto a less valuable metal object, a process that would make a piece of jewelry appear far more precious. This would explain the existence of fine, microscopically thin gilding on some artifacts from the region that has long puzzled archaeologists. Another, more mystical theory proposes the battery was used for religious or medicinal purposes. The gentle, tingling shock from the terminals could have been interpreted as a divine touch, a sensation used by priests to inspire awe during rituals, or by healers attempting to treat ailments through what they might have seen as a mysterious life force. Skeptics, however, offer a much more mundane explanation. They argue these jars were simply secure containers for storing sacred scrolls made of papyrus or parchment. The copper cylinder would have held the scroll, the iron rod may have been a decorative or structural element, and the asphalt seal was just that, a seal to keep out moisture and pests. They point out that no wires or conductors have ever been found with the jars, and that the low voltage produced seems too insignificant for any practical task. Yet, this straightforward explanation feels incomplete to many. Why go to the trouble of soldering a precise copper cylinder and carefully insulating an iron rod with asphalt if the goal was merely to store a scroll? A simple clay tube would have sufficed. The components, when assembled, so perfectly match the requirements for a basic electrochemical cell that it seems an astonishing coincidence. The Baghdad-battery remains an enigma, a collection of mundane parts that, when combined, spark a profound question. Was this an ancient tool for harnessing a fundamental force of nature, or are we simply projecting our modern understanding onto a clever storage jar? The truth is buried with its creators, leaving us to wonder just how much about the ancient world's technological spirit we have yet to comprehend. Just as the Baghdad battery hints at hidden knowledge, another American discovery was so shocking it was almost erased from history. In 1852, in the town of Dorchester, Massachusetts, workmen were using explosives to clear a ledge of solid rock. After a massive blast tore apart the Precambrian Roxbury conglomerate, a substance over 600 million years old, they made a bewildering find. Among the shattered fragments was a bell-shaped metal vessel torn in half by the force of the dynamite. This was the Dorchester pot. It was not a crude lump of metal. The vessel stood about 4.5 inches high, crafted from a silver-like alloy, and it was exquisitely decorated. Its surface bore intricate inlays of pure silver, forming elegant, stylized floral patterns. The craftsmanship was sophisticated and unmistakably artistic, the kind of work you would expect from a skilled Victorian silversmith, not from a piece of rock that formed before complex life even existed on the planet. The design was completely anachronistic, a modern-looking object sealed in a geological tomb from a time when the most advanced life forms were simple algae in the primordial seas. The scientific establishment of the day reacted with swift and absolute dismissal. They declared it a hoax, suggesting it must have been a much more recent object, perhaps a ceremonial vase from a local church that had simply fallen into a fissure in the rock. They argued that the intense heat and pressure from the blast had somehow created the illusion that it was embedded within the solid stone. The problem with this explanation was the testimony of the workmen themselves, who were adamant that the pot had been blown out of the heart of the solid rock layer with no cracks or cavities present beforehand. Despite the compelling circumstances, the artifact was dismissed as an impossibility. It was studied briefly, written about in a single scientific journal, and then it vanished. The physical object itself was lost, leaving behind only drawings and descriptions. This disappearance has, ironically, made the Dorchester pot one of the most fiercely debated OOP arts in North America. For skeptics, the loss of the artifact is proof enough that it was a fraud, a curiosity that could not withstand proper scrutiny. For believers, its disappearance is a classic cover-up, the deliberate silencing of a truth too uncomfortable for the scientific orthodoxy of the era. Without the original object to subject to modern analysis, the Dorchester pot remains a ghost, a beautifully crafted question mark permanently etched into the bedrock of our understanding of the past. The story of the Wolfsegg Iron Cube is not a singular anomaly. Decades earlier and just a few hundred miles away, another geometric puzzle emerged from the deep. In 1885, the same year as the Wolfsegg discovery, a foundry worker in Salzburg, Austria, was breaking apart a large block of coal destined for the furnace. As the coal split open, a strange metallic object fell out. This was the Salzburg cube, sometimes called the Wolfsegg cube's older, more enigmatic cousin. The object was not a perfect cube, but a slightly rounded rectangle, almost like a flattened sphere. It was made of iron and steel, and most baffling of all, it had a deep, distinct groove cut cleanly around its center. This was not a rough lump of ore. The groove was precise, symmetrical, and clearly suggested the object had been worked, shaped by an intelligent hand for a specific, if unknown, purpose. The coal it came from was dated to the Tertiary period, a geological era spanning from 66 million to 2.6 million years ago. The immediate conclusion was as startling as it was simple. A manufactured object had been found sealed inside a substance millions of years older than humanity. Analysis at the Salzburg Museum only deepened the puzzle. Experts confirmed the cube was indeed worked iron and steel. They noted its peculiar shape and the inexplicable groove, ruling out that it was any known natural formation like a meteorite. The official report stated it was, without a doubt, worked by human hands. The museum eventually labeled it as a product of an unknown, possibly natural process, but the initial findings pointed squarely toward artificial creation. The narrative from skeptics, however, offers a different path. They propose a far more recent origin, suggesting the cube was simply a piece of 19th century mining equipment. It could have been a broken tool, a guide for a cable, or a fragment of drilling machinery. Their theory is that this modern piece of iron was somehow pressed into a seam of coal, and over time the coal reformed around it, creating the illusion that it had been there for eons. This is a comforting, logical explanation that keeps our historical timeline intact. Yet, this counter-argument stumbles against the same stubborn facts as the Wolfsegg case. The block of coal was reported as solid, with no visible cracks or fissures that would allow a modern object to penetrate its core. The process of coalification, where plant matter transforms into coal under immense heat and pressure, is not something that can simply reverse to envelop a new object in a short period. For the cube to be inside, it had to be there when the coal itself was forming. So we are left with two competing stories, each straining credibility in its own way. One asks us to believe in a human industry so ancient it predates our species by millions of years. The other asks us to accept a geological process that can perfectly and seamlessly swallow a modern tool, creating a perfect fossil of industry. The Salzburg Cube, like its twin, forces us to choose between a forgotten past and a capricious nature, with no easy answer in sight. That deep, ancient coal was not the only place where impossible figures emerged from the darkness. In 1889, workers drilling a well in Nampa, Idaho, were using a standard sand pump to bring debris up from a depth of 300 feet. What emerged from the deep, subterranean muck was not just gravel and water, but a small, fired clay object. After being cleaned, it revealed itself to be a meticulously crafted humanoid figurine, just over 1.5 inches tall. The Nampa figurine was no crude lump of clay. It showed a clearly defined human form with a head, torso, 2 arms, and 2 legs, with details like a navel and genitalia subtly sculpted into its surface. The craftsmanship was sophisticated, the kind of artifact you would expect from an advanced artistic culture. The controversy ignited the moment its discovery layer was identified. It had been brought up from a geological stratum dating squarely to the Pliocene epoch, a period that ended over 2 million years ago. This was an era when, according to mainstream science, the only human ancestors were primitive hominids like Australopithecus, creatures that walked upright but had brains only 1/3 the size of our own and left behind simple stone tools, not finely detailed clay sculptures. The immediate and obvious skeptical explanation was that the figurine had not been resting in that ancient layer at all. Perhaps the drill bit itself had pushed it down from a much more recent, shallower level. A modern doll or trinket could have fallen into the borehole, and the powerful drill, pushing through hundreds of feet of sediment, could have forced it deep into the ground, creating the illusion of a great age. This is a known phenomenon in archaeology, where intrusive objects can be driven down by drilling equipment. Yet, the geological evidence from the well site presented a formidable challenge to this theory. The strata through which the drill passed were described as a consistent, undisturbed sequence of ancient lakebed deposits, including a thick layer of hard, compacted clay that lay beneath a stratum of quaternary basalt. For the figurine to have been pushed down from the surface, the drill would have had to force it through this solid basalt cap and into the pristine clay beneath, a feat considered highly unlikely by several geologists who examined the site. The sand pump itself also told a story. It brought up a specific sealed layer of sediment that had been isolated from the layers above it. The figurine was not found loose in the borehole. It was extracted from within this specific deep clay payload. So we are faced with a deeply unsettling possibility. If the Nampa figurine is genuine, and it was truly in place within that 2-million-year-old layer of Earth, then who or what created it? It points to a human presence or the presence of some other artistic, intelligent being in the Americas at a time so impossibly remote it rewrites the entire narrative of human evolution and migration. This small, silent figure of baked clay holds a question that echoes across millions of years, a question about the true artists of the ancient world. The hammer from Kingudi Quarry presents a puzzle nearly identical to its Texas counterpart, yet it predates that discovery by almost a century. In 1844, as workers in Scotland were splitting a large block of Devonian sandstone, a fully formed iron tool tumbled out from the heart of the stone. The block itself was part of a solid geological layer, a formation laid down underwater over 400 million years ago, in an era when fish were first beginning to evolve jaws. The tool was a recognizable hammer, complete with a wooden handle that had been partially transformed into coal through a natural process called carbonization. This transformation requires immense pressure and geological timescales, confirming the object's incredible antiquity. It wasn't simply resting in a crack, it was an integral part of the rock matrix, suggesting it was present when the sediment was originally deposited. How could a modern-looking tool be sealed inside a mineral tomb from a time before dinosaurs, before mammals, even before the great forests that would become our coal? The official scientific explanation offers a plausible, if extraordinary, alternative. It suggests the hammer is not nearly as old as the stone that encased it. This theory posits that the iron tool, perhaps lost by a miner in the centuries before the quarry's official operation, fell into a soft, muddy pit. Over time, dissolved minerals in the water, primarily calcium carbonate, precipitated around the object, cementing it into a solid concretion that perfectly mimicked the surrounding, much older sandstone. This process can happen relatively quickly, geologically speaking, creating a convincing but false impression of immense age. Yet, this explanation demands its own leap of faith. For the concretion to so perfectly match the composition and appearance of the native Devonian sandstone, and for it to form without any visible seams or boundaries within a solid block, stretches the limits of probability. The complete carbonization of the wood handle also speaks to a timeline far exceeding a few hundred years. The Kingudi hammer forces a difficult choice. Do we accept a geological fluke of almost unimaginable coincidence, where nature perfectly packaged a recent tool to look impossibly ancient? Or does this artifact, alongside the others, point to a deeper, more unsettling truth about the cycles of civilization and the profound gaps in our understanding of deep time? It stands as a quiet, stubborn relic that refuses to fit neatly into our textbook timelines. A different kind of enigma surfaced from the soil of New England, one carved not in metal but in stone. In 1872, workers digging a hole for a fence post near the shores of Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire struck something hard. Buried several feet down, they unearthed a dark, oddly shaped object. It was a lump of quartzite, meticulously polished into a perfect egg shape, about 4 inches long and 2.5 inches thick. This was the Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone. But it was the carvings that transformed it from a curiosity into a profound puzzle. The surface was covered in intricate, precise symbols. On one side was a solemn human face. On the other were images of a teepee, an ear of corn, a circle with spirals, and various geometric shapes like arrows and arcs. There were also holes drilled straight through the stone from top to bottom. Each bore perfectly cylindrical and smooth, as if made by a modern drill bit. The craftsmanship was undeniable, the work of a skilled and patient artist. Yet this artist remains a complete ghost. None of the symbols correspond to any known Native American tribe from the New Hampshire region. The teepee, for instance, is a structure used by Plains Indians, not the woodland tribes of the Northeast. The ear of corn is a universal symbol of agriculture, but its specific style here is unfamiliar. The meaning of the spirals and arrows is utterly lost. This disconnect has spawned a wild garden of theories. Some researchers have proposed it is a Celtic artifact, brought across the Atlantic by pre-Columbian voyagers, pointing to the spiral motifs common in European megalithic art. Others suggest it is a Native American ceremonial object, perhaps a treaty marker or a sacred calendar, created by a culture that vanished without leaving any other trace. There is even a fringe theory that it is a thunder egg, a type of geode that sometimes forms with internal patterns, though this does not account for the clearly drilled holes and the polished, symmetrical shape. The stone has been analyzed by geologists and anthropologists for over a century, and the only consensus is that there is no consensus. Its purpose is a mystery. Its creator is unknown. The language of its symbols remains silent. Unlike a hammer or a battery, this is not a tool with an obvious function. It is a message, a complex piece of communication from a forgotten hand, and we have lost the cipher needed to read it. The Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone is a testament not to ancient industry, but to a lost story, a single, beautiful page from a history book we never knew existed. Deep in the Peruvian desert, another collection of stones tells a story that defies all logic. The Ica stones are a library of ancient andesite, a hard, volcanic rock covered in intricate carvings that depict a world we have never known. The images are startlingly clear, showing human figures living alongside dinosaurs, not as prey, but seemingly as companions and even tamers. One carving shows a man riding on the back of a triceratops like a horse. Another depicts a human using a telescope to gaze at the stars. Perhaps most baffling of all are the scenes of advanced medicine, with detailed illustrations of what appear to be cesarean sections and even open heart transplants. These are not primitive stick figures, they are complex dynamic engravings that tell a coherent, if impossible, narrative of a sophisticated civilization with knowledge that predates modern science by millennia. The sheer volume of these stones is overwhelming, with estimates ranging from 15 to 20,000 individual pieces, all telling different parts of this fantastical story. The immediate and most accepted explanation is that they are an elaborate hoax. The story goes that in the 1960s, a local farmer named Basilio Ashuya began creating and aging the stones himself to sell to tourists. He confessed to this in the 1970s, explaining how he used a dental drill to carve the images and then aged the stones by baking them in donkey dung to create an authentic-looking patina. For mainstream archaeology, this confession closed the case. Yet, many researchers and investigators who have studied the stones closely point to details that the hoax theory cannot easily dismiss. The first is the patina itself, the thin film of natural oxidation that forms on rock surfaces over centuries. Some of the stones, particularly those found in documented tombs and burial caves, exhibit a patina that extends over the carved grooves, suggesting the engravings are as old as the rock surface itself. A modern scratch would show a bright, unweathered line through the patina. The second point is the staggering number of stones. Could one man, even with help, have single-handedly carved and aged tens of thousands of complex, detailed stones without a single mistake or repetition in style? The carvings show a consistent artistic hand and a deep, encyclopedic knowledge of dinosaur anatomy that was not fully available to a Peruvian farmer in the 1960s. These counter-arguments force a difficult question. What if Basilio Ashuya's confession was only a partial truth? Perhaps he did create many fakes to meet tourist demand, but maybe he also discovered a core collection of genuine, ancient stones and simply replicated them. The Ica stones present a paradox more profound than a single misplaced tool. They are not just an object out of time, they are a potential history book carved in stone, offering a glimpse of a reality where humanity walked with giants and mastered sciences we thought were our own inventions. Whether a brilliant forgery or a genuine relic, they challenge us to wonder if our past is far stranger than any fiction. The Ica stones present a prehistoric narrative carved in rock, but another discovery from the other side of the world offers a story etched in disc-shaped stone. In 1938, according to an account that has since passed into legend, a Chinese archaeologist named Kai Pu-te was exploring a series of remote caves in the Bayan Karaula Mountains near the Tibetan border. Deep within one cavern, his team made two bizarre and unsettling finds. The first was a row of graves, and within them, the skeletal remains of a small, fragile people. The skeletons had unusually large skulls and spindly, delicate frames, unlike any known human tribe. The second discovery, scattered across the cave floor, was a collection of stone discs, nearly 1,000 in total. These were the dropa-stones. Each disc was roughly 9 inches in diameter, with a perfectly round hole in its center, resembling strange, ancient phonograph records. They were made of a hard, granite-like stone, and their most astonishing feature was a continuous, tiny groove that spiraled from the center hole out to the rim. Upon closer inspection, this groove was not a flaw in the stone. It was a continuous line of microscopic, hieroglyphic-like characters, an unknown script carved with a precision that seemed impossible for a people believed to be primitive hunter-gatherers. The story goes that the discs were initially stored at Peking University and largely forgotten amid the chaos of war and revolution. 2 decades later, in 1962, a professor named Tsum Nui reportedly took on the task of deciphering the mysterious script. His conclusions, if the accounts are to be believed, were earth-shattering. He claimed the spiraling text told the tragic story of a group of beings called the Dropa. Their spacecraft had crashed in the inhospitable mountains thousands of years ago. Unable to repair their ship or return home, the survivors took refuge in the caves. The inscriptions described their despair, their struggles for survival, and their eventual, gradual integration with the local human tribes. The small skeletons found nearby were purported to be the remains of these stranded extraterrestrial visitors. It is a story that captures the ultimate what-if scenario in all of alternative archaeology, a first-person account of an alien shipwreck preserved in stone for 12,000 years. Yet, this entire incredible narrative is shrouded in overwhelming skepticism. The primary figures in the story, Kai Pu Te and Tsum Nui, cannot be verified in any academic records. No photographs of the discs in their original, inscribed state have ever been conclusively authenticated. The physical evidence, the discs themselves, has seemingly vanished, with no known examples available for modern scientific testing using techniques like electron microscopy. The prevailing academic view is that the dropa-stones are a complete fabrication, an elaborate hoax born from the mid-20th century fascination with ancient astronauts and lost civilizations. Skeptics argue the discs described are likely common by discs, ceremonial jade discs from Neolithic China that are sometimes found in burials but which bear no microscopic writing. The entire tale, they say, is a compelling piece of science fiction that has been retold so many times it has taken on the illusion of fact. But the legend persists not as a proven artifact but as a powerful symbol. It represents the deep human desire to find messages from the past, to discover that we are not alone in the universe's history, and to believe that our most ancient landscapes might hold echoes of visitors from the stars. Whether a brilliant forgery or a lost truth, the dropa-stones challenge the very edges of what we are willing to consider possible. The piri-reis-map of 1513 hangs in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul as a beautiful and terrifying relic of a world we thought we knew. Compiled by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri-Reis, the map is a stunning mosaic of the known world of his time, from the coasts of Europe and Africa to the budding outlines of the Americas. Yet, it is the southernmost edge of the map that drops a geological bombshell. There, clearly drawn, is the coastline of a vast southern continent, a land that would not be officially discovered by European explorers for another 300 years, Antarctica. But this is not the Antarctica we know today, a frozen desert buried under miles of ice. The Piri-Reis-map shows a continent with flowing rivers, verdant mountains, and a coastline free of its immense glacial covering. The map's own notes explain that Reis compiled it from numerous source maps, including what he called ancient charts from the time of Alexander the Great. This single sheet of parchment suggests that someone, in a warm and distant antiquity, mapped a green Antarctica, a feat that would require a civilization existing before the ice caps formed over 6,000 years ago. The implications are staggering. For the map to accurately depict the subglacial topography of Queen Maud Land, as some researchers claim it does, its original source would have to come from a people with advanced seafaring and cartographic skills, a culture capable of a global survey in an era we consider prehistoric. This theory points to a lost golden age, perhaps the fabled civilization of Atlantis or another sophisticated society wiped from memory by a cataclysm, leaving only fragments of their knowledge behind in scattered libraries. Mainstream cartography and history offer a more conventional but no less fascinating explanation. They argue that the mysterious landmass is not Antarctica at all, but a distorted, composite representation of the southern coast of South America, blended with speculative geography and the rumored terra australis incognita, the unknown southern land that had been a fixture on maps since the time of the ancient Greeks. They point to inaccuracies in the map, such as the strange orientation and the apparent merging of the South American continent with this phantom land, as proof that it is a work of conjecture, not precise, ancient data. This debate is not merely about a drawing, it is a battle over the very possibility of a lost chapter in human history. Does the piri-reis-map preserve a faint, copied echo of a world surveyed by a civilization that gazed upon an ice-free Antarctica? Or is it simply a brilliant but flawed product of its own time, a patchwork of sailors' tales and educated guesses? The map offers no easy answers, only a silent, tantalizing challenge from the past. While maps hint at lost global surveys, other ancient wonders reveal a mastery of form and scale on a more monumental level. Deep in the jungles of Costa Rica lie hundreds of perfectly round stone spheres, some as small as a baseball, others towering as high as a man and weighing over 15 tons. These are the stone spheres of Costa Rica, and their existence is a quiet, massive declaration of a mystery we have yet to solve. They were carved from a hard, igneous rock called granodiorite by a pre-Columbian culture known as the Diquis, a people who flourished from around 700 to 1500 of the Common Era. The sheer number of these spheres is staggering, with over 300 documented, and their near-perfect sphericity is what truly defies belief. How did a society without metal tools, without the wheel, and without written records achieve such geometric perfection? The method of their creation remains one of archaeology's great puzzles. Researchers believe the Diquis likely identified naturally rounded boulders and then painstakingly shaped them using a combination of controlled heat, rapid cooling with water to fracture the stone, and meticulous pecking and grinding with other, harder rocks. This was a process of endless patience and profound skill, a testament to a forgotten school of engineering, but creating them was only half the battle. The other monumental task was moving them. How did these ancient people transport 16-ton spheres of solid stone across miles of dense, mountainous jungle and river delta without beasts of burden or complex machinery? The most likely theory involves a system of ropes, log rollers, and immense communal effort, a feat of social organization as impressive as the spheres themselves. So what was their purpose? The theories are as varied as the spheres are numerous. Some researchers propose they were astronomical tools, aligned with celestial bodies to mark solstices or other important dates, acting as a giant stone calendar under the open sky. Others see them as powerful status symbols, arranged around the homes of chieftains to display their wealth, power, and connection to the cosmic order. Another compelling idea is that they served as territorial markers, delineating the lands of different clans or signifying sacred spaces. Yet, none of these explanations fully account for the obsessive drive for perfect roundness. A rough marker or a simple pillar would have sufficed for any of these purposes. The incredible precision, the investment of thousands of hours of labor into achieving a perfect form, speaks to something deeper. It suggests a sophisticated, almost spiritual understanding of geometry and a desire to mirror the perfection they saw in the heavens, the sun, the moon, the planets themselves. The spheres are not crude tools for survival. They are expressions of an advanced intellectual and artistic vision, a level of sophistication that seems to hum just beyond our understanding of the societies that inhabited this land before Columbus. They stand as silent, perfect orbs, holding a secret we can only circle around but never quite grasp. High on a temple wall in Abydos, a story is etched in stone that seems to defy all logic. Among the traditional symbols of gods and pharaohs, a cluster of hieroglyphs stands out with shocking clarity. To any modern eye, they are unmistakable. One looks exactly like a helicopter, complete with a cockpit, rotor blades, and a tail fin. Right beside it, the clean lines of a jet plane or a submarine are just as distinct. This is the abydos-helicopter, a set of carvings that has become a cornerstone of alternative history. The immediate, thrilling interpretation is that ancient Egyptians witnessed or perhaps even possessed advanced technology. Could this be a record of time travelers visiting the Nile or proof of a lost civilization's forgotten achievements? The carvings feel like a direct message, a snapshot of the future left in the distant past. Mainstream Egyptology, however, offers a far more grounded yet equally fascinating explanation. These are not depictions of machines, but a spectacular accident of history known as a palimpsest. The Temple of Seti I was later modified by his grandson, Pharaoh Ramesses Roman II. In that era, it was common practice to plaster over existing carvings and recarve new hieroglyphs on top, a process that updated the temple's dedications. Over millennia, the plaster has fallen away and erosion has worn down the stone. What we see today is not a single image, but a complex overlay. The helicopter is a chance combination of parts from different hieroglyphs carved at different times. The rotor blades might be the arms of a human figure from the older layer. The body could be the distorted remains of a cartouche, and the tail might be a staff from another symbol. Our brains, wired to recognize familiar patterns, assemble these disconnected fragments into the shape of a machine we know. This psychological phenomenon is called pareidolia, the same instinct that lets us see faces in clouds or animals in rock formations. Yet, for those who question the official story, this explanation feels incomplete. The composite image is so clean, so perfectly recognizable, that it seems to stretch the limits of coincidence. The theory of precognition suggests that the artist, in a trance-like state, unconsciously channeled visions of future technology, embedding these forms into the sacred text. Or perhaps it is evidence of something even more profound, a literal blueprint left by visitors from another time or place who wanted to leave a clue for a future generation. The abydos-helicopter is a different kind of tool altogether. It is not a physical object you can hold, but a tool of iconography, a catalyst for speculation that cuts to the very heart of how we interpret the past. Do we trust the slow, meticulous work of archaeological reconstruction, or do we listen to the immediate, visceral shock of recognition? This temple wall does not give up its secrets easily, leaving us to wonder if we are looking at a meaningless trick of erosion or a deliberate message from across the ages. A slab of greywacke stone pulled from the roots of a Minnesota poplar tree in 1898 carries a message that threatens to tear apart the conventional map of American history. This is the Kensington runestone, a 200-pound tablet covered in runic inscriptions that tell a harrowing tale. The text describes a party of 30 Norse explorers, a mix of Swedes and Norwegians, who journeyed far to the west from Vinland. It tells of 10 men being killed, red with blood and dead, and ends with a desperate plea for rescue dated to the year 1362. If genuine, this stone is a first-person account, a linguistic tool that would push the timeline of European presence in North America forward by 130 years after the Vikings of Elands Ox Meadows and deep into the continent's heartland. The academic world has been at war over it ever since its discovery. The debate centers on the language carved into its face. Skeptics, particularly linguists, point to the runes and the grammar as being filled with anachronisms. They argue the language is a bizarre mix containing elements that are modern, even for the 14th century, and that it seems to mimic the Swedish of the late 19th century, the very time and place it was found. They see it as the work of a clever forger, perhaps a local Scandinavian immigrant with knowledge of runes and a desire to plant a piece of the old world in the new. Yet, the evidence for its authenticity is equally compelling and remarkably physical. geologists who have studied the stone note the deep, extensive weathering within the carved inscriptions. This level of erosion, they argue, is not something that can be faked in a few years. It suggests the runes were exposed to the elements for centuries, long before the farmer who found it ever cleared his land. The stone itself was also found wedged beneath the roots of a large, old tree, a context that suggests it had been lying in that spot for generations untouched. So we are left with two competing realities. One paints the stone as a brilliant hoax, a piece of folk art that fooled generations. The other accepts it as a genuine artifact, a solitary, weathered gravestone left by a band of lost explorers who ventured farther and lasted longer than any history book has ever admitted. This stone is more than a rock. It is a testament carved in runes, a ghost story from the American Midwest that whispers of longships on inland waters and a Norse presence that refused to be forgotten. A small, unassuming terracotta head discovered in a Toltec grave in Mexico holds a feature that shatters the isolation of the ancient Americas. Unearthed in 1933 at the Klerksdorp site, this artifact, known as the Klerksdorp head, bears a striking and undeniable resemblance to classical Roman sculpture. Its style, with a full beard and the distinct hairstyle known as a Subian knot, is completely alien to pre-Columbian art forms. It looks precisely like a Roman portrait from the 2nd century, a tiny piece of Italy somehow buried in Mesoamerican soil decades before any Spanish conquistador arrived. The head was found in a sealed burial offering beneath two undisturbed floor layers, associated with artifacts that have been dated by thermoluminescence to somewhere between the 9th and 13th centuries. This context is crucial. It places the object firmly in a pre-colonial era, centuries before European contact as we know it. The immediate, breathtaking implication is that a Roman vessel, perhaps blown hopelessly off course, may have crossed the Atlantic and made landfall in the New World. Could Roman sailors have traded this small figurine, or perhaps the man it represented, with the local Toltec people, leaving behind this single, silent piece of evidence of a journey history forgot? Mainstream archaeology, however, presents a far more conservative explanation. The leading theory is that the head is a post-colonial intrusion. It could have been a Spanish possession, a curio brought over from Europe in the 16th century that was somehow mixed into an older archaeological layer. Given that the site was excavated in the 1930s, there is also the persistent possibility of a hoax, an object planted to cause exactly this kind of controversy. Yet, scientific analysis has repeatedly challenged these simple dismissals. The thermoluminescence dating, which measures the last time the terracotta was fired, confirms its antiquity. Furthermore, a mineralogical analysis of the clay itself suggested it was of local origin, meaning the head was not brought from Europe, but was crafted right there in Mexico by someone intimately familiar with Roman artistic conventions. This detail transforms the mystery. It is not just an imported trinket, but a local product made in a foreign style. So who was the model for this portrait? Was he a shipwrecked Roman traveler who integrated into Toltec society, his strange features immortalized by a local artisan? Or does this small, bearded face point to a much broader, more sustained contact between the hemispheres, a secret history of the seas that our textbooks have yet to record? The head offers no answers, only its stoic classical gaze, a Roman face forever fixed in the heart of ancient Mexico. The idea of a perfectly balanced metallic sphere, a product of natural chance, pushes the limits of credulity for many. This same skepticism is amplified by another set of enigmatic objects that have emerged from the deep mines of South Africa, distinct from the Klerksdorp finds. Often referred to simply as the grooved spheres, these artifacts share a superficial similarity but present an even more profound challenge. They are typically composed of a nickel-steel alloy, a material that does not form naturally in such a pure metallic state. This is not a simple mineral like pyrite that can crystallize into a ball. This is a manufactured metal, the kind of alloy you would expect from an industrial smelting process. The spheres themselves are often etched with 3 parallel grooves running around their equators, grooves so straight and precise they seem to defy any known natural weathering or crystallization pattern. For those who argue they are not natural, the most compelling hypothesis is that these objects are machine components. Their shape, their composition, and their grooved design point directly to a function, perhaps as ball bearings or parts of a gyroscopic system from a piece of sophisticated ancient machinery. Imagine a civilization so advanced that it left behind only the most durable fragments of its technology, scattered geological evidence of a world that operated on principles we would not rediscover for millions of years. The official geological consensus offers a much more grounded explanation. These spheres are classified as concretionary pyrite marbles. In this view, the process begins with a microscopic grain of mineral acting as a nucleus. Over eons, layers of pyrite and other minerals precipitate from the surrounding sediment, slowly building up in a spherical form. The grooves, scientists argue, are simply the result of crystalline growth patterns or the immense pressure from the surrounding rock strata, which can squeeze the forming sphere and imprint these lines upon it. They are a marvel of geology, not engineering, a testament to nature's ability to create stunningly complex and symmetrical forms through simple, undirected chemical and physical laws. This is the classic, enduring clash at the heart of so many of these mysteries. Do we trust the slow, meticulous processes of geology to explain these perfect spheres, or does their specific metallurgy and design point to a different, more thrilling origin? One view asks us to accept a series of incredible natural coincidences. The other asks us to rewrite the entire history of life on Earth. These Russian microspirals are so tiny they nearly escape the very concept of scale. Discovered in the remote Ural Mountains during the 1990s, these artifacts were unearthed from layers of sediment along the banks of the Kozhim, Naroda, and Balbanu rivers. They were not large monuments or simple tools, but microscopic curiosities that only revealed their true nature under the lens. Some were as minuscule as 1/10,000th of an inch, smaller than a human hair. Yet their form was unmistakably technological. They appeared as perfect coiled spirals, some with central axes and symmetrical turns, looking for all the world like the components of a microscopic machine. Scientific analysis delivered an even greater shock. These objects were not made of simple copper or iron. They were composed of tungsten and molybdenum. These are not common metals. Tungsten has one of the highest melting points of any element, and molybdenum is known for its strength and resistance to heat. Both are critical in modern aerospace and military technology, used in everything from rocket engine nozzles to the filaments in incandescent light bulbs. Finding them in this refined, manufactured state, in objects 100,000 years old, is an impossibility that echoes through the halls of material science. The theories that attempt to explain them are as extreme as the artifacts themselves. One of the most compelling ideas is that they are remnants of an ancient, sophisticated nanotechnology. In this scenario, a lost civilization, perhaps one we have yet to uncover, had developed manufacturing capabilities on a microscopic scale. These spirals could be the scattered debris from their machinery, the only surviving pieces of a technology that was otherwise biodegradable or destroyed by time. Another, more grounded theory points to a more recent source. The Ural Mountains were a major industrial and military hub for the Soviet Union, and the region saw heavy fighting during World War II. Could these be fragments from advanced Nazi or Soviet experimental technology? Perhaps a secret weapons test left behind this microscopic shrapnel, which then settled into the river sediments. Yet, this explanation crumbles against the geological evidence. The microspirals were found embedded in deep, undisturbed layers of earth, some at depths of up to 40 feet, within strata that have been consistently dated to be 100,000 years old. This was not surface debris. This was material sealed in a geological tomb from an era when, according to our history, Homo sapiens were just beginning their migration out of Africa, equipped with nothing more sophisticated than stone hand axes. So we are left with a choice between two staggering possibilities. Either we are looking at the fingerprints of a 20th century arms race somehow impossibly buried in the deep past, or we are witnessing the ghost of a nanotechnology that flourished when humanity was in its infancy. These tiny, coiled metal forms force us to consider that the path of technological progress may not be a straight line, but a spiral, returning to points we never knew we had visited before. Far from the microscopic spirals of Russia, another ancient puzzle presents itself on a scale both massive and perplexing. Scattered across the landscapes of Sri Lanka lie objects known locally as sky arrows. These are not simple spearheads or arrowheads. They are large, expertly carved stone tools, some weighing several pounds, shaped with a distinct and sophisticated aerodynamic profile. Their teardrop form, with a pointed tip and a flared, stabilizing base, looks uncannily like a modern dart or a missile. The design is so clearly intended for flight that it seems to defy its own physical reality. A human arm simply could not generate the force needed to effectively throw an object of such density and weight. It would be like trying to hurl a brick with the precision of an arrow. This fundamental disconnect between the object's design and human capability has spawned enduring legends among the local people. Oral traditions speak of a time when a race of giants roamed the island, beings of immense stature and strength for whom these heavy stone projectiles would have been lightweight hunting tools. Other stories elevate their origin even further, claiming they were not weapons of giants but of the gods themselves, divine armaments used in celestial battles that raged across the skies of the ancient world. These myths provide a cultural framework for an object that otherwise makes no practical sense. Moving beyond legend, researchers analyzing the sky arrows are faced with a compelling technological hypothesis. The perfect symmetry and advanced aerodynamics suggest these stones were not meant to be thrown by hand at all. Instead, they could be evidence of a lost launching technology. Perhaps an ancient civilization developed a mechanical device, a type of large atlatl or even a primitive catapult system, designed specifically to harness and amplify human force. This machine, likely constructed from wood and cordage, would have long since decayed into dust, leaving behind only the durable stone projectiles as silent testimony to its existence. The sky arrows stand as a stark reminder that an artifact's true function can be hidden not just by time, but by the perishable nature of the technology it was meant to be used with. We are left looking at the bullet, but the gun has vanished from history. That same impulse to carve meaning into the heavens is writ large across a barren plateau in the Middle East. In the Golan Heights, a sprawling monument of dark basalt stones known as Rujum el-Hiri, or the Wheel of Giants, lies silent under the open sky. It is not a handheld object but a landscape-sized tool, a machine of stone and horizon built over 5,000 years ago. Its structure is a series of concentric perfect circles with walls standing over 8 feet high in places, all centered around a massive, mysterious burial cairn. The sheer scale is breathtaking, involving thousands of tons of rock meticulously arranged by a people from the Chalcolithic period, an era we typically associate with simple copper tools and early village life. The precision of its construction is what truly defies expectation. Key gaps in the walls and specific standing stones are aligned with the solstices. At sunrise on the summer solstice, the sun's first rays pierce through a precise opening, striking the central cairn with dramatic accuracy. This was not a haphazard arrangement. It was a sophisticated celestial calendar, a stone computer designed to track the passage of the seasons with a level of cosmic understanding that seems to belong to a much later age. So what was its ultimate purpose? The theories are as layered as its rings. The central tomb suggests it was a necropolis, a final resting place for a person of immense importance, with the entire complex serving as a colossal funerary monument. Yet the tomb appears to have been added centuries after the circles were built, as if a later people found the site and decided to use its powerful center for their own sacred purposes. This only deepens the mystery of its original architects. Other researchers argue it was a cultic center, a place of pilgrimage and ritual where ancient people gathered to mark the turning of the year, their ceremonies synchronized with the sun's journey. The energy required to build it, the communal effort spanning generations, speaks to a society organized around a powerful, shared belief system. And then there is the more speculative idea that the expansive, circular formation, visible only from high above, served as a landmark or even a landing site for something or someone from the skies. The Wheel of Giants stands as a paradox, a tool whose function is frustratingly out of reach. We can see its mechanical precision in tracking the stars, but we cannot hear the prayers that were spoken there or understand the minds that conceived of such a grand design. It is a megalithic engine whose gears are made of stone and shadow, a testament to a forgotten science that measured time itself. High on the arid plains of Peru, the Nazca-lines stretch across the desert floor like a giant sketchbook. These are not small artifacts to be held in the hand, but immense geoglyphs carved into the crust of the earth itself, forming intricate patterns of animals, plants, and geometric shapes so vast they can only be seen in their entirety from high above. For decades, the prevailing theory was that they served a purely ritualistic purpose, sacred pathways walked by priests to invoke the gods of water and fertility in this harsh landscape. But what if these colossal drawings were not just art or a spiritual exercise? What if they were a tool, an instrument built on a scale so grand its function has been almost impossible for us to comprehend? One compelling theory suggests they were a gigantic astronomical calendar. Certain lines have been found to align with the solstice sun, and some of the animal figures may correlate with constellations visible in the southern hemisphere. In this view, the desert plateau was transformed into a monumental observatory, a stone clock face used to track celestial cycles and mark the seasons for planting and harvest. The precision required for this would have been immense, demanding a sophisticated understanding of mathematics and astronomy that seems extraordinary for a culture from 2,000 years ago. Another, more grounded hypothesis posits that the lines were a map, not of the stars, but of something far more precious in the desert, water. Researchers have noted that many of the lines and trapezoids directly overlay underground aquifers and fault lines. The geoglyphs in this scenario could have been a hydraulic map, a massive blueprint created to indicate the location of life-giving water sources. The act of creating and maintaining them might have been a communal ritual inextricably linked to the management and veneration of water itself. Then there is the most speculative idea, one that captures the imagination like no other. The long, straight runways and precise geometric shapes have led some to propose they were landing strips or navigational markers for ancient aircraft. This theory attempts to solve the puzzle of their creation, asking why anyone would build images they could never see, unless the intended audience was viewing them from the sky. While mainstream archaeology dismisses this for a lack of any corroborating evidence for such advanced technology, the question of perspective remains haunting. The scale and precision of the Nazca-lines required the creators to have some method of visualizing their work from an aerial viewpoint, a feat of surveying and engineering that is a profound mystery in its own right. Whether a celestial calendar, a water map, or something even more mysterious, these lines are a testament to a civilization that thought in magnitudes we can barely grasp, leaving behind a tool whose purpose is written in the earth, yet remains just beyond our understanding. 25 artifacts from across the globe cannot be dismissed as isolated mistakes. When you step back from the individual mysteries, a startling pattern begins to emerge from the noise. These objects, from Texas to Romania to South Africa, share common threads that weave a tapestry far stranger than any single anomaly. One of the most powerful themes is their geological context. Time and again, these tools are found not lying loosely on the surface, but sealed within the Earth's deepest archives. They are encased in coal beds millions of years old, embedded in Cretaceous sandstone, or buried in undisturbed strata that predate humanity itself. This is not a matter of things being lost and found. It is a matter of things being entombed, locked away in rock that formed when the world was a different planet. The materials themselves tell another part of the story. We see refined iron that should not exist, aluminum alloys that demand 19th-century industrial processes, and complex nickel-steel combinations that speak of a deliberate, sophisticated metallurgy. These are not random lumps of native copper pounded into shape. They are the products of a deep understanding of material science, a knowledge that, according to our history, simply was not there. So what overarching narrative could possibly explain these persistent global outliers? One compelling theory points to a lost global civilization, an advanced culture that flourished in a forgotten age, perhaps before the last ice age. A cataclysm, a great flood, or a planetary shift could have erased nearly all traces of their existence, leaving only their most durable tools and artifacts to be fossilized and scattered like seeds across the continents. This would explain the similar levels of technology found in disparate parts of the world, all pointing to a single, vanished source. Another, even more profound possibility is that of extraterrestrial intervention. Could these objects be the discarded or lost technology of ancient visitors? The grooved spheres and microscopic spirals could be machine parts from a crashed vessel, while the simpler hammers and nails might be the terrestrial tools they created or inspired. This idea frames human history not as a linear climb, but as a story of contact and influence where our progress was periodically nudged or perhaps even started by outside forces. And then there is the most conservative yet equally humbling explanation. Perhaps we are simply wrong. Our understanding of natural geological processes may be incomplete. Could rapid mineralization create near-perfect cubes and encase hammers in a matter of centuries, not millennia? Is it possible that nature, through a series of 1 in a billion chances, can produce objects that mimic advanced technology with uncanny precision, from grooved spheres to what looks like a spark plug? This view asks us to accept that our timeline is correct, but our interpretation of nature's creative power is desperately limited. Each of these possibilities demands a radical shift in perspective. One asks us to rewrite human history, another to accept we are not alone, and a third to admit that the natural world is far more mysterious and capricious than we ever believed. The true pattern these artifacts reveal may not be in the objects themselves, but in the questions they force us to ask about our place in the cosmos and the silent, forgotten epochs that came before us. 25 artifacts stand as silent witnesses against the official story of our past. From the iron hammer in a 100-million-year-old rock to the intricate gears of the Antikythera Mechanism, these are not random anomalies. They form a chorus of contradictions, a collection of evidence that, taken together, becomes impossible to ignore. We have seen refined aluminum beside mastodon bones, stone spheres of impossible perfection, and maps depicting lands free of ice. Each one on its own might be dismissed as a fluke, a hoax, or a geological oddity. Healthy skepticism is a vital tool, and many of these mysteries may indeed have ordinary explanations. Yet the sheer volume of these discoveries, their global distribution, and the consistent themes of advanced metallurgy and precise engineering they display, create a pattern that demands we keep an open mind. The evidence suggests our history is far richer, more complex, and infinitely more mysterious than any textbook has ever dared to admit. The past is not a closed book, but a story still being written. What other secrets are buried beneath our feet, waiting to be discovered? The search for truth is what drives us forward, Share your thoughts on the most compelling OOP art in the comments below and subscribe for more journeys into the unknown.